Hello, friends. Welcome back. I am so excited to have a little coffee chat with you this morning. Whether you're listening to that this morning, in the afternoon, this evening, I'm recording this in the morning and I've got some coffee here if you are just listening to the audio. And if you are watching on YouTube, hello, great to see you. If you're listening and you're like, wait a minute, there's YouTube videos. Yes, check out my YouTube channel, Julie Menden, where we post all of the recordings that you can see the video live as well as when I have guests. So, welcome back, and I'm so excited today to talk to you about Sedona. So, I want to talk to you about what are some of the life lessons that I learned and life business lessons from hiking in Sedona. So this is actually the second year that I took this trip. Last year, I was speaking at two different conferences in Arizona. One was at the start of the week, and one was going to be at the end of the week. And I was like, what am I going to do in the middle? Well, I had always wanted to go to Sedona. I love Arizona. I love the Scottsdale area. I think it's beautiful, but I'd always wanted to drive up to Sedona. So last year, I took that time in between and I was like, I'm going to go up to Sedona by myself and have like a little retreat and do some hiking. And it was life changing. I don't say that lightly. It was truly absolutely amazing to have gotten away. I've traveled by myself before, obviously, for speaking, for conferences, for events, but I had never traveled as sort of my own like leisurely time and done exploring like that on my own. And so it was so many things. Like last year, I remember it being empowering, a little bit scary, and that still, stuck with me. And I think I had written an article. I'm gonna have to like re-bring that out. I think I had written that one on my LinkedIn article. So if you follow me on LinkedIn, I have the Confident Leader newsletter where I also post things. So go ahead and check that out. You can subscribe to get that newsletter as well. And I had written about that experience, and I'm gonna have to write another one about this year. So last year, it was my first time hiking and doing it by myself and all of these things. And I just remember it being like invigorating and empowering, and so many things came up. And so this year, when I had a conference that was going to be in Scottsdale, I was like, all right, I'm going to take a couple days at the front end and I'm going to go back to Sedona. And it was just as magical. So my first tip for you is if you have never taken a solo trip before, and maybe yours isn't going to Sedona and going hiking. Maybe it's just like an overnight or going hiking locally or something, but something about taking a trip by yourself and putting yourself in a situation that is uncomfortable but exciting. Like, it is so empowering to do that. And so I would strongly recommend that you consider doing it. I kind of have it on my list of goals to do it every year now. And I just really like Sedona. If anyone's familiar with Sedona, it's definitely, like, I would say on like the woo scale, if energy and energy vortexes and crystals and all of that. And if that's not your thing, that's awesome. You can check out something else, but it is just really cool. It's beautiful. The red rocks, the hiking. So I booked an Airbnb, this beautiful, that I called like vibey Airbnb, because I had gone very intentionally on this trip to kind of step outside of the day-to-day of my business and do more of kind of what I call like the CEO level tasks. I had some big business things I wanted to do, trying to implement systems in my business and more processes and focus on high level things. Like for me, I had some changes and updates I wanted to make to my keynote speeches and some of my programs. So if you're not familiar with what I all do, right, I do keynote speaking. So if you're ever looking for a speaker on topics usually around leadership, mindset, and speaking, so I was working on that, as well as I have my Confident Leader Academy, which is my coaching program for executives, and my Speak Up, Stand Out Speaker Academy, which is specifically helping people become paid speakers. So really growing and scaling their business through speaking. So as a business owner, you can get really in the day to day, right? And supporting clients and recording podcasts and all of that. And this was an opportunity for me to step outside of that. So in addition to my tip of trying to find a time to solo travel, my next tip is intentionally schedule time in your schedule to do sort of those high level or like macro level things, because we are so often in the micro moments, like all of the day to day and the checklist and the to-do list. And I know I had really been feeling it. I had been feeling sort of anxious and overwhelmed, and like I knew I wanted to work on these things in my business. And I'm someone who's very much so, I need a creative environment. So I love my at-home office here. I really like how it's set up, but I just needed to get away. And so that was really what this was for. And so the energy there, and for me, I love it getting like the juices and the avocado toast, and which are crazy expensive, but it was just part of the experience. So those are two things. Is I felt so much more energized being just in a different environment. And I would wake up in the morning and I'd go hiking, and it's hot, right? So I was in Arizona in August. Sedona's a little bit cooler than Phoenix, but it's hot. So I would get up at 5:30 and be done hiking by 9:30, and then I had all day to work on stuff. And just like last year, like as I was hiking, I had all of these just like creative, like intuitive hits that would come to me about like, oh my goodness, this is such an example of life and business. And the same thing happened again this time. Like I'd be out hiking, I don't listen to music or anything like that. I'm just truly there and present. But actually, let me start by telling you a story. So I had so I have to fly into Phoenix, and then it's about a 2-hour drive up to Sedona, which is a beautiful drive. I fly in, I get my rental car, I drop all my stuff off at the Airbnb. I'm just loving it. And I'm like, I need to get a walk in. Like, I need to get some movement after all that travel. So I start to take a walk, and I'm like, I'm like, oh, this is amazing. I feel so invigorated. I feel so like energized. It's so empowering. I get to this beautiful lookout. I'm taking pictures. And then I go, okay, I'm going to walk back to my Airbnb now and find something for dinner. I'm walking back, and I see something cross the road. Like, I don't know my feet or my yardage. If you're listening to this, no judgment, okay? It was close. Like, I don't know exactly how close it was, but it was quite close. I see this thing cross the road. I do a double take. It was a mountain lion. A mountain lion. I'm out there hiking by myself. I'm on a road, okay? I'm not even at this point in some remote spot, but I'm on a road by myself. There's no cars coming by, and a mountain lion crosses. And I have been in Sedona for about 30 minutes. So, my heart's racing. I call my husband Jake, because he can help me when I'm in Arizona and he's in Wisconsin. But he's an outdoorsman, so I'm thinking he'll know what to do. And he's like, this is so cool. It's so rare to see a mountain lion. I'm thinking, that's great. I don't feel special right now. Later on, I will maybe think it's cool. But what do I do right now when I feel like he's stalking me, in the trees here? So that was my intro to Sedona. Obviously, I lived to tell the tale, and I made it through, but also a reminder to always be safe, be aware of your surroundings when you're out hiking, and pretty crazy. So, other than that, I still did decide to go out hiking, and just these beautiful spots. And some of the things that came up for me again this year was just trusting your own gut and intuition. And so it came up for me with hiking, but again, I just feel like this relates so well to life and business. I have an app called All Trails, which thank goodness last year someone recommended I had. Otherwise, I'd still be lost out in the desert hiking in Sedona, because some of the trails aren't super clear. And so I had this All Trails app. But there's moments where you're like, I don't really know which direction to go. It's not a clear path. And they each kind of look like they could be the trail. And I remember going, which one feels right? And again, I have my app, and so I can double check. And if I start going down the wrong direction, the thing is, it's going to guide me back to where I should be. But I always started first with like, what feels right? Like, which one? Like, trust yourself. So that's one of the first tips. And how often do we go where we think other people, like this happened last year. I saw somebody else going down a trail, and I just started following them, only to realize they didn't know where they were going. And so instead of following someone else, I should have just followed what I know to be true. And so I want you to think about that, is how can you trust yourself more and follow that own inner guide and your own intuition, instead of going where others are going or where you think you should go, or seeing so many options and getting that like paralysis by analysis. Like, trust yourself. And for me, that is really empowering, because I'm not very directionally gifted. I rely on Jake so heavily when it comes to like, if we're out hiking or if we're out driving or something, I'm always like just leaning on him to do it. And it's so empowering when it's like, no, he's not here. Like, you have to figure this out. You have to trust yourself. You have to use your resources, your guide, your app on your own and figure it out. And that was really a big moment for me last year and again this year of reminding like this is my business. These are my decisions. This is my hike, like really taking ownership of that. So that's the first thing that I would say to you. The next thing is to just get quiet sometimes, right? We are so inundated with listening to music, listening to podcasts, watching TV, listening to other people talk in meetings, all of this. And we can get just like overwhelmed. Like our nervous system can get overstimulated. And when I was out hiking, it was just me. And if there was people passing by or if there was, animals making noises, but it was just getting quiet. And I get so much clarity in quiet. So the first tip is to trust yourself. The second tip is to embrace that quiet and see what comes up for you. Oh my gosh, I get so creative. I get so energized. I remember who I am when I allow myself to get quiet and to really quiet all of that noise. The other thing is to just have gratitude and appreciate. Like as I'm walking around, I'm just so grateful for this opportunity for, Jake taking care of Sawyer and everything back home. Grateful that I did this, grateful for this beautiful view. And just reminding yourself to sometimes step back and just have appreciation and gratitude for things that are going on. The fourth thing I would say is to give yourself, and this kind of goes hand in hand with like just giving yourself this opportunity, but is to get that macro view. So kind of what I was saying before about why I did this, but one of the hikes I did was pretty much like a straight up hike. And I guess this is like two things in one, like get a macro view, but also challenge yourself. So we're going to start with the challenge yourself. Okay. So the challenge yourself is like one of the hikes that I did was like almost like a straight up hike, and I'm afraid of heights. Okay. Vulnerable moment here. As an adult, it was years ago, but as an adult, my family took a trip to the Kalahari and I did the indoor ropes course, knowing I didn't like heights, but I was like, my dad, my brothers are doing it. I was like, I'm going to do this. And I get up there and I get across like two of the little things and I start crying, like shaking and crying. Okay, that's how afraid of heights I am. So I decided to do this one where I'm like climbing straight up. And there were so many moments on this hike that I almost turned around, because it would have been easier if someone else was there with me to like help me get up some of these steps and get up some of these things. And we're doing, which I think it's called scrambling. Like I'm not a professional hiker, so if you're listening and you are, send me a message. But I think it's like scrambling. You're actually like using your hands and you're like on your knees and your feet, like climbing up at parts. And there were so many moments that I stopped and I went, you're not going to do this. Like, we're not going to do this. And I would stop and I'd look around and I would try and talk myself out of it. And at that moment, a couple came up and started to pass me. And, we were chatting a little bit. And I told them I was afraid of heights and I wasn't sure. And they're like, you can do it. We'll see you at the top. And I was like, okay. And I would go up a little bit higher. And then I'd get to another moment where I'd get stuck. And I'm looking around and just like before, like trusting yourself, like there was no clear way to get up. And all I'm thinking is, okay, I'm going to like slide down this thing. And I just had to take a step back and take a pause and reassess the situation, right? It's the same thing with life and with business. Sometimes we're so in it that we can't even see the solution. And once I allowed myself to just pause and take a deep breath and look around, I more easily was able to see, oh, there's a step right there I can take, right? And so pushing yourself and challenging yourself, it would have been so much easier for me to just say, oh, I made it far enough, I'm just going to go back down. But I did it, right? I took that pause, I reassessed, and it's the same thing in our business, in our life. Like if we feel like we are just so in it and we're in over our heads or we're overwhelmed, take a pause, take a step back and allow yourself to see the options that you have. And then I was able to make it up to the top. And as I got to the top, that couple that had passed me was cheering for me. It was like, you did it. And obviously I felt so amazing. And that kind of goes into the next thing that I would say about how hiking relates to life and business is just getting that macro view. So, you get up to this hike and you can see just all of this beautiful Sedona, and just perspective is different, right? When I was down on the ground and looking up, it seemed so big and so scary and so huge. And when I got to the top, I was able to get this new perspective. And it's the same thing with our lives and with our businesses and with our careers, that we need to get a new perspective sometimes. We need to change our environment. We need to change our view. We need to get that macro view and look at things from a bigger view instead of just looking at it from this big, scary thing. And the only way I got up to the top of that was one step at a time. One step at a time. If you are trying to tackle some big thing right now, remember it's one step at a time. I didn't just snap my fingers and get to the top. And I did this other hike that was called Devil's Bridge. It was pretty scary. And, it was another one I didn't do last year. And I was so proud that I did it this year. And it was the same thing. It was just a lot of this self-talk about getting myself through this hike. And then I have this amazing picture of me standing over this Devil's Bridge, which looks terrifying, but it's wider than it looks, I promise. And it's just like, I did it, right? So some of the big things that I really want you to think about and how hiking can relate to these challenges that we have in our lives is trusting, first of all, giving yourself the opportunity to do something like this. That's scary, that's challenging, but then trusting yourself, trusting your own guide, being grateful and appreciative, getting that different perspective, allowing yourself, like pushing yourself to do those things, pausing sometimes and reassessing so that you can see the different options available to you. And I think the last thing that I would say is just allowing yourself to embrace all of these different versions of you. If you would have asked me a few years ago if I would be going hiking in Sedona by myself, where I see mountain lions and I'm hiking by myself, solo hiking, and I'm doing these things. It's like, no, that's not who I am. That's not who Julie is, right? And we've talked about this before on the podcast, is like redefining who you are and getting out of the box that you have put yourself in of what you are capable of. Because now I've done this twice and I guarantee you I'm going to do it again. And so it's no longer outside of who I am. It's part of who I am. I am becoming that person, that version of myself that does those things, that does these scary things, that takes those chances, that embraces those opportunities, and it helps me to grow and develop as a person. So these are my big insights that I wanted to share with you and the lessons that came up about how this relates so much to our lives and our careers and our business. And I hope that, if anything, this allows you to think about what opportunities. Yours doesn't have to be flying and going somewhere else even. I encourage it if you have that opportunity, but if you can't, what can you do at home where you're at to step outside? How can you maybe go take a walk, go do something different to challenge yourself, take a new fitness course, or maybe you've always wanted to try dance or taekwondo, or maybe there's a hike around you that you want to do, but what can you do to challenge yourself, and how can you get a different perspective? And in those moments, how can we step back and reassess when we feel like we're so in it? So those are my tips for you, and message me if you want to see some of these pictures. And this is definitely something that I'm adding more pieces to my keynote, which has been called Activate Your Success Mindset and Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life. And it's actually getting a little bit of a rebrand, which I'm so excited about. That came up from this hike, which is Unboxing Your Potential, the keys to confidence, resilience, and unstoppable growth. And as you know, I've been doing this keynote for a while, and I give it to all different groups. I give it to, corporate organizations at their conferences. I give it to small business groups. I give it to other types of events and conferences, because it's really around how can you make your mindset work for you instead of against you. And we talk about the 3 key things that you can do. And this came to me when I was in Arizona of like, I want to change the title, and I want to lean even more into that message of mindset and how that can help you overcome challenges regardless of where you're at. And I have some amazing pictures that we're adding in to the talk with these hikes and all of those pieces and how they encompass that. So reach out to me if you have any questions, you want to learn more about Sedona, about any of that, and I would absolutely love to talk to you about it, and I can share the pictures with you. All right, that's all I have for you today. So until next time, I cannot wait to talk to you soon.